This conference will now be recorded.
Thank you, Bill. Good morning. It's Monday, May 4th, 2020 a.m. This is the Muscatine County Board of Supervisors. I'd like to call the meeting to order. First item on the agenda is to review the agenda.
This is Scott. I'll second.
Okay, I didn't catch the first. Was that Nathan or?
Yes, it was.
Okay, I have a motion by Nathan, a second by Scott. Any discussion? Okay, so the agenda, we have a motion by Nathan, a second by Scott. Scott, how do you vote?
Aye.
Nathan?
Aye.
Santos?
Aye.
And Doug?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Item number 2 is discussion of possible action to approve claims dated April 20th, 2020 in the amount of $380,449.95.
Scott, move to approve.
Santos seconds. I have a motion by Scott, a second by Santos. Is there any discussion? Scott, how do you vote?
Aye.
Santos?
Aye.
Nathan?
Aye.
And Doug?
Aye.
Oh, I'm sorry. I vote aye as well. Okay. Item number 4 is items of the county engineer, Keith White. Keith, first item is review bids and possible action to award the bid for LM 20-17370 pavement markings at various locations throughout the county. Keith, you on with us this morning?
I am. Good morning. You all should have had a bid tabulation. As you could see, we only received one bid. Pretty much in line with the last prices we saw, so I recommend approval and awarding the bid to Iowa Plain Signing of Slater, Iowa.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments on that?
No, I'll make a motion to approve that.
A motion by Santos.
Scott, a second.
A motion by Santos, a second by Scott. Santos, how do you vote?
Aye.
Scott?
Aye.
Nathan?
Aye.
Doug?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Motion carries. Keith, did you have a projects update for us this morning?
I did. As far as construction, the 120th Street Bridge, they're still working on dirt work up there. Weather continues to affect those sorts of things. On the G28 paving project, they're making pretty good progress on hauling the cutout from Band Egg Hill there. They had planned to remove pavement out at Independence and get ready to pave, but they this morning decided to postpone that because of the forecast. So probably, depending on the weather, G28 might get closed tight at the far west end this week, depending on that. They're still looking to hope to start pouring concrete the following week of May 11th. That depends on them getting their plant set up and calibrated, so I'd say that's slightly up in the air. But the rest of the work on that project continues. The F-58 Old Highway 927 project from Durant to Walcott, Haggerty was to start today. Today's the late start date, and today is really to just be signage and moving into the job. So that that should get going, and Triple B is still down on Echo, but getting close to done down there on that of a 3-pipe project, and then they plan to move to 122nd Street tomorrow, and that would get closed. And that's it on the construction side. On the design side, I said construction is getting very busy, so design's slowing down, but we are work on 171st Street PCC overlay. That will require a bit of a grade raise on Yankee, so there's some additional work to do there, survey-wise. The rest, mostly nothing new. That's all I have, pending any questions.
Are there any questions on projects for Keith?
Yeah, this is Santos. On the G28 project, when we start setting up that plant and we get ready to start pouring the concrete, for the plant, are we doing third-party cylinders testing or air or slump tests of any sort on that concrete before we do that, or are you internally doing that, Keith?
Well, not. Are you asking what testing do we do, or I mean the plant belongs to Han. They're setting it up, but you know, standard on the paving projects are beams that are made, and cylinders are almost never ever. Air is ran as required per the DOT specs, which is driven by the amount of yards in a day. Slumps are not done anymore. So that's kind of what, and those are done by us. The plant usually does their own parallel tests, if you will, and not necessarily beams that we're looking at for strength. Beams nowadays are used to generate a curve to correlate with stress meters that are placed in the pavement in the field to determine when it can be opened. So the breaking of beams throughout are not what governs that. Once we have a curve, then it's simply the reading of the stress meter to the curve to decide when it can open. I hope that answers your question.
Well, yeah, I didn't realize that we didn't have another third party to verify what Han is actually giving us, I guess, in a sense. Normally, I thought we would have an internal or an external, like a Terracon or somebody else that would come in and verify random checks for either cylinders of some sort, or at least checking to see what type of, like you said, if they're not doing air or if they're not doing slumps, how do we know we're getting actually good concrete?
I did not say that. I said slump tests have not been done for years. That's no longer a measure. But I said air tests, we do. We have 2 air pods, and they run their own. Ours govern, and we make the beams, we cure the beams, we break the beams, and we establish the curve.
Okay. That's what I wasn't sure.
We do have a person of our own that we monitor plant operations. We only use Terrac for something that we can't do, say a nuclear gauge test or something. We typically do compaction testing.
Okay. So in this case, go ahead.
No, but we do testing with our own staff.
Okay. So I guess that's what my question was. We do anticipate to do testing once we get the G28 project up and running.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. That's what I guess I was just trying to get at, just to verify. And I didn't know what testing we were doing, and now I understand a little bit of what we're not doing and what we are doing. So I appreciate that. That's all I had.
It used to be, just to follow on to that, Santos, the DOT particularly, all the money in this project is either from state road use tax or federal road use tax, and they used to monitor a whole lot. Now they almost do not monitor at all. We typically ask them to come monitor, and again, in days past, they would do that, and we do get a bill when they do that, but they're pretty much not doing that anymore. But that would be another party looking things over.
And that's fine. I just wanted to make sure we were, at least that way, we're able to keep the contractors accountable and yet still being able to know that we're doing our due diligence and testing and verification of what we're actually getting for what we're paying for. I appreciate that, Keith. Thank you. Yep.
Okay, any other questions for Keith? Okay, item 4C, other. Keith, did you have anything else to share this morning?
The only thing I thought I would mention is most all of our vehicle purchases are somewhat delayed by the factories being shut down. We're hoping that GM and Ford gets back to it here this month so that we can get our stuff before the end of the fiscal year. And the one thing that has arrived is our motor graders, although we have not taken those from Altorfer yet. And it's actually kind of a pleasant change because normally when we're aiming for the end of the fiscal year, we're holding our breath that it gets here. And it seems like every year we get a call, it's a month late, it's 2 months late, but they actually have two of them in their possession, one for this fiscal year and one next year. So that's a good thing, and we will be swapping those out towards the end of the fiscal year here. That's all I have pending questions.
Okay, any board members have any questions for Keith? Thank you, Keith.
You're welcome.
Okay, item number 5 is discussion of possible action to approve the renewal of a Class B wine, Class C carry-out beer, Class E, and Sunday sales permit for Casey's Marketing Company doing business as Casey's General Store, number 2472, 1334 Highway 22, Nichols, Iowa.
Nathan moves to approve.
So I have a motion by Nathan and a second by Scott. Any discussion? Scott, how do you vote?
Aye.
Nathan?
Aye.
Doug?
Aye.
Santos?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Okay, item number 6 is discussion of possible action to approve a renewal of an Iowa retail cigarette, tobacco, nicotine vapor permit for Casey's Marketing Company doing business as Casey's General Store, number 2472, 1334 Highway 22, Nichols, Iowa.
Scott moved to approve. Santos seconds.
So I have a motion by Scott, a second by Santos. Is there any discussion? Scott, how do you vote?
Aye.
Santos?
Aye.
Nathan?
Aye.
And Doug?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Motion carries. Item 7 is discussion of possible action to approve the minutes of the April 27th, 2020 regular meeting.
Scott moved to approve. Doug second.
I have a motion by Scott, a second by Doug. Any discussion? Scott, how do you vote?
Aye.
Doug?
Aye.
Nathan?
Aye.
Santos?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Motion carries. Item number 8 is correspondence. Scott, did you have any correspondence this week?
I did not.
Nathan?
I did not, actually.
Okay. Santos?
I had a call on a business looking for small business loan information, and I pushed them in the direction of the city of West Liberty. And then I had also a call from another county resident on a drainage issue on the drainage field that they were looking at, and I gave them the information to contact their furnace. That's all I had.
Okay, thank you, Santos. Doug?
I received an email from Ed Askew about raising funds for Muscatine County Fair, and another email from Henry Marquardt with concerns about the agreement with Alan Ostrigen, and that's all I had.
Okay, thank you, Doug. And I had no correspondence this week to note. So let's go to committee reports. Doug, did you have any committee reports this week for us?
No committees.
Santos?
I had the ISAC on the 24th with the DHS Director Garcia. And that was an online listening.
Okay. Nathan?
I did not have any.
And Scott?
I had no committee reports.
Okay. And I had electronic as well. On Monday the 27th, I had the Mississippi Valley Workforce Authority, and we appointed our new board, the joint board. So we had that meeting. And then also on the 27th, I had the Eastern Iowa Mental Health Region, where we had to adopt and approve the Children's Plan for publication to the state. And that was it for me this week. Okay, item number 10 is COVID-19 updates, including a discussion and direction regarding requested modifications of various county offices. Nancy, I don't know who wants to lead this. Did you want to say just a brief word about this?
Sure, Jeff. At this point, I guess we're looking for direction. I had talked to you guys last week about that a number of offices had requested some modifications, and so we had Mike Nolan looking into that. He's done some investigation and has indicated that we're probably looking at some significant costs for some of the detailed changes that some of the offices are wanting. He also indicated that we probably, another option for us that we might consider is just the temporary plexiglass barriers like the auditor's office has purchased, and possibly providing masks for our employees. So at this point, we're looking for some direction about whether you want us to move forward with Mike Nolan or how the board wants to handle this. Do you have anything?
Okay, board members?
I got a question on that. Nancy, the plexiglass that we're getting for the auditors, is that something that's going to be anchored down, or is that something that's just free floating that they can move and put in front?
I can explain. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Leslie.
Oh, I can explain it. We already have it. It's in place. It's temporary. It just sits on the counter. It sits all on our counter, and it has pass-through windows in the bottom of it for us to pass stuff back and forth between us and the voter. And we can take it down at any point and take it back apart and put it away. So it's very temporary.
Okay. So I guess I would be open to something like that, but I'd like to hear some of the other ones. And my concern is more around the recorders area because they're sitting down lower. So if we have an opening, then physically that's probably the height level of somebody that would actually be able to potentially cough or sneeze in that direction. So that would be a concern for the recorders area. But other than that, I think I would rather move in that direction, and that's my opinion.
Santos, this is Nancy. I guess are you thinking treasurer instead of recorder? Because at the record office, they stand
my
in the
bad.
desk. Okay, so
I'm
you're
sorry,
thinking
yes.
the treasurer's office?
The ones that are, yes, my bad. I don't even know what I was thinking about that. Yeah, the treasurer's office down below. Remember when we talked before, I think in budget we discussed about even giving them even computers that maybe they can stand on or something so we could have those adjusted. But in this situation, if they're happy sitting down, that's going to be the challenge with being able to put plexiglass in between where they would be able to hand off things back and forth. So I would think that would be something that we may need some input from maybe Mike or somebody else from staff in regards to that, or looking at a different potential for that area, how they would protect them. And I would also be looking at wanting to have masks available for staff, if so desired. I'd like to be able to know that they have that opportunity to put that on.
Well, Santa, this is Sherry. Amy's been checking into it, but we would assume that the plexiglass panels that have a pass-through, that pass-through would not be at a location where somebody could cough or sneeze through it, unless it would be maybe a child at the counter, and that's something we're going to have to deal with. The other situation I have is I reached out to our manager about what type of mask and that sort of thing. So we're trying to figure that out.
Yeah, this is Jeff. I saw the notes, some notes go back on masks. I think as we all probably saw last week, there were 77 communities that were allowed or getting a phased-in open-up approach. Certainly Muscatine County is not in that situation. I think we all see that we have a number of issues that we're dealing with throughout the county, but I think we should probably be prepared as we move forward here if we open up, how we open up. I think we need to be very careful to make sure that we keep our employees safe. I think we've done a good job to this point, and departments have. I think the actions we took early have helped us, but now the question is when we start opening the economy back up and services to the taxpayer, how are we going to do that and ensure employee safety? So I like the idea, the path you're running down. I would think that maybe I would like to see a consistent approach, because we have more areas. We have community services we have to be thinking about. We have the treasurer and recorder's office. We're certainly, with the elections coming, we have the auditor's office. I know the county attorney gets a few people off the street. Planning and zoning does as well. And so I just think we have a number of areas we need to think about.
And we have the courthouse also. That if we start doing office entry remodels, we're going to have a request from all of the office wanting something done, and that's where we're getting into some pretty significant money when, it's been discussed if it's build plexiglass walls and put indoors for staff, and then staff go out to Walmart after hours, they could still be exposed. So, that's why we're thinking, let's try a more temporary solution and provide the mask, which seems to make the most sense for now, because remodeling front counter spaces for all of the offices, including courthouse, if we're going to do that, that needs to be well thought out. And I don't know that we have time for that right now.
I would agree with that, Sherry. I think that could be a large project, could take significant amounts of time.
Right. So we've been looking for what can we do in the meantime. I mean, I think the consensus is we don't open to the public until we're ready to have some protection in place. But I don't think with the plexiglass panels, Leslie can answer this, I don't think it took her too long to get those. The question could be, how long will it take us to get masks? What type of mask do we want to get? And that sort of thing.
I can answer a little bit of that. The plexiglass literally took me one day the first time, 2 or 3 days the second time, because I ordered some. I ended up ordering some additional to set it up a little better for in between. We originally ordered the ones with the pass through to put them 6 feet apart. The problem is then you got an opening in between, so then we ordered some solid ones for in between. The solid ones, because they were a special order, took about 2 or 3 days. But the 24 by wide by 36 tall ones with a pass through that are like for each station, those took us just pretty much about a day to get. And the other ones that I had made didn't take more than a couple of days, and those were solid to go in between the stations, so you didn't have somebody trying to reach around them or something like that. As for masks, we've struggled with getting masks. We have a lot on back order, and I have some coming from Homeland Security someday. Don't know when, but I was able to get the cloth mask that you can put a filter in, which we basically. It's not perfect, but we're using the coffee filters because you couldn't find anything else at the time. But I have enough for my staff and all my poll workers on election day. They're the sewing kind that people in town have done. I took them and added the elastic to them, sewed on the elastic to them for over the years, and that's what we are using in here. And we are also using gloves in here. The vinyl, whatever they're called, gloves in here. We're using one use only. Well, basically, we're using pens that we got as cheaply as possible. And when the person votes, they're taking the pen with them or throwing it away. We are not taking back. We are not using it a second time. Our glue sticks that they use to seal, we have a lot of them. It'll be used once, then it'll be cleaned again before it's given to another voter. We will be wiping those down before they go back out to another voter. That's kind of what we're doing. We were able to put together real quick, real simple. I guess I could just say we're here right now instead of later that we had to open today. We are blocked off from the rest of the building. We have a partition in our hallway so that you can't get through the second floor to anyone. The first floor door in the back is locked. So you can't get on the first floor. You can only go up the steps of the elevator to our office from the back door. That's the only door that's unlocked in this building for voters to get in. The front doors are still locked, and there's signage directing the voters to go around to that door and that they can only go in to go up to our office. And the only people we're dealing with that way are voters. We're not letting anybody come in and research real estate and all that back in our office or anything like that. We're literally keeping them on the other side of the plexiglass. If anybody has any questions, but we are doing absentee voting starting today, but I still encourage everyone to do it by mail. We've had a tremendous turnout by mail. We've already issued 2,200 absentee ballots, which is about how many normally vote in a primary election. So we're having a huge turnout, but people do seem to be listening and doing it by mail. That's all I have.
Thank you, Leslie. Anyone else? So I think, Nancy, as far as this is concerned, maybe we'd ask staff to just, Sherry, and you just kind of continue to work with departments individually, it sounds like, and I don't think we're going to be able to put a large, massive project together. I think we're going to have to kind of take it on a one-by-one basis and do some of the simple things like the auditor's office has done. As far as the masks, I believe there still is a national shortage of like an N95 net mask, and that in situations like us, they're recommending some of the simple homemade masks or some other type of device to just shield the face.
Jeff, this is Brian Wright. You're correct in that comment.
Thank you, Brian. I think, Brian, are we also still, like rubber gloves, is there still latex gloves, is there still a national shortage of those, or are those freeing up a little bit?
Due to the situation of the 2 long-term care facilities I have in Muscatine County, there's a strong demand for the gloves, sizes, gowns, masks. So it's pretty much everybody's trying to get the same items. My recommendation would be to just use the cloth, the homemade mask. There are on the CDC website the proper way to make a mask, so there are resources that you can look at.
Thank you, Brian. Do other board members have anything they'd like to share? Nancy, is that about as clear as mud? Nathan,
Sorry, I was trying to unmute. I would agree. I think trying to slapdash any kind of a construction project right now is problematic. We're not in a place where we're reopening imminently. We have that ability to stay shut. So, yeah, I think we need to continue to keep our eyes open and our options open, provide maximal protections while keeping apart from each other right now. So I would agree with the driving consensus thus far.
This is Nancy. I guess my only question would be, would the board like to request our emergency manager to coordinate and help with finding the appropriate masks? Because we certainly don't have the ability to make them for all of our staff.
Brian, I'd seen that there were some industries that were helping out with these types of masks. Have we seen those locally, or where are we at on that? Do you know?
There is an industry that has. I have not heard anything about those masks. There certainly would be a cost associated with it. One of the other recommendations I could ask you to consider is having the public mask up coming into the facilities. That's just a recommendation. I know a lot of places are kind of looking at it. Local public health would definitely like to see people wearing masks when they're going into commercial stores and such. It's just a means of additional protection.
Brian, this is Nathan. I think that that makes a lot of sense. I see incomplete enforcement and lack of will to enforce that at the places I'm at, your grocery stores and whatnot. And I don't know that we want to be in the business of trying to enforce that, so I'd just rather keep everybody distanced from the offices, operate remotely or close to the public, but still providing the services we can, rather than relying on forcing the public to mask up, because I don't think that's likely to be accomplished or to generate goodwill in forcing it to be accomplished.
Understandable. I can certainly get a list of vendors. Iowa Homeland Security has a list of vendors. They're not vetted, so I can't say, yes, you're going to get what you need. I can certainly look at an option here locally with that information. I can provide that to Nancy.
Thank you, Brian.
This is Nancy. Brian, that would be very helpful to us if you could do some of that legwork and then get us the information, and we can make a determination about what we need to purchase.
Certainly, Nancy.
Thanks, Brian.
Okay, did we have any other updates or anyone else on this item?
Jeff, this is Doug. The only thing I could think is we could ask the public to wear a mask. I know we can't enforce it, but I don't think it's a bad idea to ask them to wear one just for more protection.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, Doug, and I think I've noticed a lot of businesses that recommend it, and I think public health certainly is recommending it when you're in an area where social distancing is not practical, or that you take the cautions and wear a mask. So I think that would be good to maybe we add that to our signage on our buildings as well.
We'll add that to our election signage this morning.
Thank you, Leslie.
did I drop off? All of a sudden, everybody got quiet.
I'm still here. This is Nancy.
This is Scott. I'm still here.
I'm still here.
This is here.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was talking to myself. Okay. I apologize for that. Item number 11A is discussion of possible action to approve a contract between Muscatine County Historic Preservation Commission and Tallgrass Archaeology for consulting services in conjunction with Muscatine County Survey of Country Schools and Churches in the amount not to exceed $14,000. Do we have someone from the commission on this morning?
I don't believe that we do, but this is, you guys already approved the application for this grant and accepted this grant. This is just the final step in it to actually sign a contract with the person who's going to do the survey work.
Okay, there was just a little bit of confusion when I read that grant. I saw the not to exceed 14,000, and I saw like another like $7,900 referenced in there. So that this is a not to exceed 14,000, and I think I don't know, was $60 or $70 an hour kind of thing.
Well, Jeff, the grant amount is, I believe, the 79, maybe 7,950. Then the commission is using the money they got from the engineer for redoing the bridge out in the western part of the county, the 4,200 and some, for the match. So the commission has the cost of the 14,000 covered.
Okay, so I was getting confused between the dollars and the match amount. Okay, thank you, Sherry, for that clarification.
Yeah, the grant amount is I believe 7,950, and then there's a match for the commission that they have already come up with when the grant was approved. So this is hiring the consultant to actually do that grant work.
Okay, thank you. That was my confusion. I saw that 7,950, and I wasn't tying that out quite right. Thank you. Other board members have any? If not, I would accept the motion on this.
Jeff, this is Eric. I have a question.
Yeah.
And maybe Sherry would need to answer that. I see this is the first time I'd actually been able to look at this contract. We had kind of offered when they first started this notion to help with some GPS data gathering. In my mind, that was going to be kind of as my staff was out and about, and the commission had possibly provided us with some locations. Looks like they're maybe more numerous than what we had originally envisioned, but just as a matter of discussion, Sherry, would we need to track any time our efforts being considered in kind? Do we need to track mileage or staff time as we're assisting in this?
I think we certainly could do that and count it as an in-kind match, absolutely.
Okay. So unless the board sees otherwise, I was going to continue to proceed with as we are out and about in some of these areas, and not necessarily dedicating direct staff time to spending, 2 weeks gathering these points. I guess that's how I envisioned it. Any comments on that?
I think that's appropriate, Eric. I don't think the commission's come and asked us to dedicate staff time to this at this point.
Okay, and we'll proceed accordingly. And also, I think with today's technology, a lot of it may actually be able to be done, and I can work with the commission just literally moving your mouse around on the appropriate mapping screen, whether it be Google Maps, and you can get GPS locations sometimes that way too. So we may be able to minimize actual travel on coming up with some of those coordinates.
Okay, thank you, Eric. Somebody else have the comments or questions? If not, I accept a motion on this item.
Nathan, so moved.
Santos, seconds.
Okay, I have a motion by Nathan, a second by Santos. Any further discussion? Nathan, how do you vote on the item?
Aye.
Santos?
Aye.
Scott?
Aye.
Doug?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Motion carries. Item B is discussion of possible action to approve an agreement for consulting services on Ostergren. I'd asked Nancy to put this on the agenda today. as you all know, that we have our first assistant is now officially our county attorney until we can get through the appointment process. And I'd work with Alan to create a potential, as you saw in the agreement, potential agreement with Alan. There are a number of items that he has always personally handled and would continue to do that. And I'll forget without pulling the agreement up. The contract is bottom line on old cases. We get paperwork filed that this county has to respond to and deal with. And I think that it would be unrealistic to ask someone new in the role or new to do that, plus just with general guidance day to day. So I open that up for some discussion for possible action on this.
Yes, Nancy, I would just like to also add to that comment that Alan also indicated that the fees that he would be charging under this agreement, that it would be absolutely appropriate for us to pay that out of the fine collection program funds that the county attorney's office has accrued.
Okay, thank you, Nancy. And yeah, I failed to mention that that was his thought on how that might be funded. The other thing is, you noticed in the agreement, it is a month-to-month agreement, and it is in such a manner as if and when we do appoint a county attorney, that they can terminate the contract at their discretion.
Jeff, go ahead.
Jeff, this is Scott. And I've reviewed this, and I think this is an incredibly good idea, personally.
Jeff, this is Nathan. Scott, are you done? I'm sorry, I don't want to cut you off. I guess so. So I didn't have a problem with the scope of work, possibly with the exception of some language I think just needs to be tweaked that would allow the county attorney or whoever is acting in that capacity for discretion as to whether to retain Mr. Ostergren on various things. Like, I don't see that there's that kind of discretion in item 2C. I don't have a problem with the monthly renewal. If I were papering this myself, I'd make the cancellation provisions a little more robust, saying exactly what has to happen when. I see this as a friendly agreement. I don't think Mr. Ostergren would be trying to take advantage of it. My primary concern is about the fees, and I understand we could pay that from the collection. That's not an issue. I just get nervous about paying a flat fee for an amount. That could go one way or the other very quickly. If we have a ton of work, that could really put him under the 8 ball. But as an independent contractor, he'd have the ability to repeat it. And if there's 2 minutes worth of work, that would pay him $4,000. Until we have someone who can get a handle on that, and I think we're looking at making an appointment on Monday. I'd like to see the fees be some kind of a contingent or probationary amount for the first month, if we put it in place now, and then have the county attorney negotiate these based on what he or she thinks is an appropriate amount. Because I don't think any of us on the Board of Supervisors have an idea as to what the appropriate value of the legal services is. So I guess what I'd like to see is this done on a 1 month a 1 month fee structure, and then that's renegotiated by the county attorney once he or she's had a chance to get their feet wet.
Yeah, Nathan, this is Jeff again. And I agree with you, but I think the challenge is, and I don't know how you do that. Maybe we could work on the agreement a little, and I think that would all be fine. The challenge is we don't know what we don't know. I personally, I'm dealing with a lot of issues with mental health and workforce board right now, and so I probably send half a dozen legal inquiries to the county attorney every week, and have for the last several weeks. And I know that the city's experience they have outside counsel that provides them that, and I had talked with individuals in the city and what might be appropriate for these type of services, and they indicated that they spend far in excess of this on these types of services. So, that I think this is a pretty fair offer personally, but I also want to be cognizant of the expenditure and all of that for sure.
Well, I'm not trying to say that's not an appropriate amount. Don't get me wrong. I think that $4,000 a month to someone who's providing a large amount of legal work is extremely fair. I just want and I know it says that the county attorney can cancel it, month to month. I guess I'd like to see just a provision. I'm fine with the $4,000 for the first month, especially given the level of usage you're indicating. I'd like to see that fee portion be revisitable. Something like it'll automatically agree, but the parties are, do they have a reopener clause to negotiate each month in terms of the fee amount?
Yeah, and I think that would be fine. I think Alan would be okay with a negotiation of that, a further negotiation of that contract. Nancy, maybe you can clarify a little bit.
I guess that conversation hasn't been had with Alan, but we can certainly approach him about maybe Nathan can pencil out kind of the language change that he'd like to see, and we can present that back to Alan.
Yeah, and then just to clarify, none of that is to say Alan isn't worth that. That's all I'm trying to say. I'm just saying, over time, the county attorney is going to get a better handle on what kind of usage we need to make of Mr. Ostergren. And I just want the flexibility in that agreement to be able to adjust it to account for that usage. And so I'd be happy to do that, Nancy and Jeff.
Yeah, I think that if you have some ideas, Nathan, on how we might structure that so that it gives us all, because quite frankly, maybe you'll find that we're overburdening them as well, and 4,000 is not enough. I don't know the right answer. I just know experience from other municipalities locally that it's a pretty fair amount, or it appears to be. But then again, I have no way to judge the workload either.
Jeff, this is Doug. I agree with Nathan on this. And one question I have is that Alan can cancel that month to month, but the board also has the power to cancel that. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think it automatically renews if we don't give notice by like the 15th of the month, something like that.
And this is Nancy. The way the agreement is written, it's not the board that would cancel the contract. It would be the county attorney that would have the ability to notify by the 15th of the month to cancel for the following month. Yep.
Right. I don't think we'd want that authority with the board, as we're not privy and shouldn't be privy to the interlegal workings of the county at all times. And we don't really understand what the needs are. But yeah, I hear you, Doug.
And I agree with that, Nathan. That's why I think it makes perfect sense the way it's structured. Is that we'd authorize that since we don't have a county attorney at this point, and this is a conduit for the first assistant to reach out. But once we have a county attorney, it's in his or her court, whatever the process yields.
This is Nancy. The one thing we might want to consider is the acting county attorney may need some assistance before next week when we would be able to bring this back. So I would just ask that if the board would agree by consensus that when we do come to an acceptable agreement, we still honor that for this first month, the agreement will be considered a full month. That gives the acting county attorney ability to use Alan's services this week, and Alan knows that he's not doing that for free.
On a prorated amount, Nancy?
Either on a prorated amount or just consider it a full month. If she can use the services as of today, even though the agreement's not in place yet.
Sure. So that's the other thing that is, I think, a little bit confusing just about the wording is, it's removed. does that full month go 15th to the 15th, or is it a calendar month where you have to renew or cancel by the 15th? I think probably there's not an intent to get paid $4,000 for a week's work of work. I think probably it's just a question of clarifying the terms in the contract, and I'd be happy to take that on as well.
Yeah, I think this is all good input and makes perfect sense. And if you'd be willing to do that, Nathan, and then I think the question to the members of the board would be, if that would be an acceptable solution.
So we probably need to get something in. Well, does the board need to approve if she temporarily hires him for this week under these terms? I mean, if she can pay it out of fines and collections, we don't need to appropriate any money for it.
Yeah, actually, Nancy, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this board authorizes the county attorney's budget. The acting county attorney, the first assistant, could do this today if she chose, correct?
Could do this could sign this agreement, or could just reach out and make arrangements with Alan for his assistance and negotiate whatever fee she can negotiate with him. I'm not clear what you're asking me.
Well, this agreement was written, was authorized by the board, but certainly she could come up with her own agreement with Alan and fund it through the budget without the board action. I would think.
I don't know that I can answer that off the top of my head. There may be some language in the code that requires board approval for the county attorney's office to hire outside assistants. I'm not positive about that. I would have to look at that before I could answer that question.
Well, I think my concern is that we get something in place, so if we need to take advantage of these services right away, that we have something in place. So would it be possible for the board to authorize the acting county attorney to make such arrangements as are necessary through the 15th of the month, preferably along the terms of this agreement, while at the same time giving us time to revisit the tweaks that are necessary to this agreement and then adopt it at our next meeting?
That certainly would be a solution.
That's what I would suggest then in that case.
And then Nathan, you would take on the, kind of your ideas for termination and other things in the agreement that would make more sense.
Yeah, and again, it's not that I think there's anything inherently wrong with the agreement. I think a couple things just need to be clarified. But I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, and I appreciate your input on that. Anyone else any other board members want to chat about this? I do see that Bill Riley has indicated that Henry Marquardt has requested to make a comment on this topic. So
did Ed Askey. I sent one to Nancy. I sent it. I wanted to talk about it.
Okay. So board members, are we where we are on this project? Ed, if you'd like to make a brief comment.
Very quickly. First off, I think the first assistant attorney should come back to the board listing the deficiencies she needs or he needs help on. That should be the first thing. And before you make a decision on even a temporary hire of a elected official who resigned from office. So to me, I can't decide what is important or not. Did the first assistant say, "Oh, geez, I can't handle your questions, Jeff, for this week. We need to hire Alan," or whoever you select for the interim county attorney. They need to come back to the board and say, "Okay, I wish to." So it'd be a two-step process. I do agree with Nathan having a written contract, statements of work for my consulting company. Yeah, there's a lot of things that need to be added in, and Nathan hit a lot of them on the head. But what I'm saying is the first thing before you decide to even give the acting, you're acting a county attorney, any authority to spend money on something, you ought to ask the person, do you need these services or do you feel comfortable doing them? I mean, that's the thing. Check with your staff first. So, end the comments.
Thank you, Ed. Henry, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I do. I just have a couple of questions first. Did I hear correctly that you plan to make the appointment of the interim attorney next week?
I think I can't, I'm sorry, I can't speak for the group. I believe that I've heard that the interview process was scheduled for the candidates. The postings were out, and that they're planning to bring a recommendation on May 11th. Is that correct, Nancy?
That is correct. We advertise, we run a notice in all 3 papers and posted on our website. The deadline to submit a letter of interest and resume was last Friday. The committee that was appointed to review and bring a recommendation to the board is scheduled to meet at 3 o'clock today. And the intent would be to get whatever they need to do done this week so that the recommendation could come to you next week. By law, we have a deadline that we have to meet between the time that we publish notice of intent and we actually make an appointment. If the appointment's not made by the 13th of May, then we would probably need to start that process over.
Okay.
I just had one question on the process. I know you published in the papers. Was there attempts made to reach out to the County Bar Association because they didn't publish anything, and they normally publish information regarding judicial vacancies and the like? So my question is, did you reach out to Cale Nisley, the president of the Muscatine County Bar Association, and ask him to circulate any information regarding this?
This is Nancy. No, we did not. We simply advertised in the papers and posted on our website.
Okay.
Henry, this is Nathan. I had conversations with any number of the members of the bar, and I think it was nobody expressed any surprise to me about the process. They'd known about Alan's announcement for some time. So, I think that the process was legal, it was open, and it's what we got.
Nathan, I don't disagree whether it was the process was open. I just think you missed a serious opportunity in not going through Mr. Nisley and the Bar Association, as they do for judicial or magistrate vacancies. So that was my only point regarding that. As to this agreement, I think a couple of things that were clarified this morning. If you're talking about something that the first assistant may need assistance in the next couple of weeks before a county attorney is appointed, I don't think anybody has a problem with reaching out to Alan for this. But I do have a number of issues with the agreement as you've written it. First of all, and this would I just think this is woefully premature. Isn't this, again, if you drew a cutoff on the agreement that said once the new county attorney comes in, this agreement terminates, I'd be okay with it. But, this seems to be the decision that the interim county attorney should make, whether or not this person requires Alan's services. An experienced attorney may require just, a few phone calls or a question or two to Alan. Furthermore, you're missing an important resource. The State Attorney General's office is available to assist in county attorney succession. And frankly, I'd submit that if you hire an interim attorney who actually needs a lot of services from Alan, that you've hired the wrong person. This contract really interferes with the ability of the interim county attorney to perform the duties of the office by, executing this contract prior to the retention of an interim county attorney.
I suggest changes I did that we put this in place. We authorize the acting attorney to deal with this for 10 days or whatever until the 15th. If he or she decides that she needs it, then great, they can negotiate more going forward. And certainly they're still free to take advantage of the succession services offered by the county attorney. I think the understanding here is that anybody who comes in from Des Moines or elsewhere is going to have to get up to speed, and we have the ability to take advantage of just the institutional experience of Mr. Osterger. And so, he's available to be used to the extent determined by our county attorney, and I'm certainly willing to put the trust into whoever is appointed and eventually elected, if he and they still need it, into them to make those decisions for themselves.
Well, as long as you have kind of an understanding, and this contract doesn't, I think that you would need to maybe rewrite this contract to make it clear that there's really two processes. One is that this is an interim, that if the county board is retaining somebody to assist the interim county attorney in the next, for the next few weeks, that would be fine. But it really is something that, legally is really the county attorney's position, legal authorization and the like, to retain whatever assistance that person, needs. You're basically saying we're paying somebody, we're going to pay Alan $4,000 a month, and because of the way that you have this written, that there's a notice provision on the 15th of the month, you're really almost guaranteeing at least 2 months of payment. And you said you may not have an interim county attorney may not require any more than a couple of phone calls. And Nathan, as you know, as I know, that there's an ethical duty on the part of an attorney leaving a position without cost to provide assistance to the person's successor in the transfer of clients and legal information and legal support. So there may not be a need for any services or minimal services by the new interim attorney. So I'm just saying that I think that this, essentially agreeing to pay 2 months of services when these services may or may not be needed at all. So I would just urge you to draw a line and say this contract authorizes the assistant county attorney or acting county attorney to use these services, and just throw this over to the new interim county attorney the interim county attorney to handle.
Very good. Thank you for your input, Henry. I think that Nathan and you all have brought some excellent points here. So I think the question is, do we want to move? Do we want to put out an option, or do we wait? I think we need to make sure that the interim attorney understands that they're authorized to utilize those services. I'm a little cautious of authorizing things without a knowledge of cost, but maybe, Nathan, you had indicated you could work on some of the concerns on the agreement and see if we could do that, and then make sure that we would make it retroactive to the start of the process.
Yeah. Correct, and including, I think tweaking of the terms. I think probably the 15th was just chosen to be a date, but, and that's why I suggest that we change the terms to clarify when exactly everything would start. I would recommend, and I'm going to talk this through till I figure out exactly how I want to make the motion, but essentially authorizing, taking action to authorize the acting county attorney to utilize the services of Mr. Ostergren on more or less on the terms of this agreement, whatever they need to, until, the date acts, whether that's next week, whether that's 2 weeks out, just on an emergency basis. And then we could have in place an agreement that the then appointed acting county attorney would be able to assess, reject, so on and so forth, as to the level of service that he or she desires. So, does that make sense? First of all, I guess I want to say, does that sound like a decent idea to everybody? If it does, that'll make a motion.
It makes sense to me.
This is Doug. I agree.
This is Santos. I think that's a good idea as well. I like the good conversation and good feedback.
This is Scott. I agree.
Okay, then, thank you guys. I will make the motion then to authorize the acting county attorney to retain the services of Mr. Ostergren under the terms of this agreement on a prorated basis through May 11th, 2020. That's the motion, and then with the understanding that we would tweak the agreement and make it address the concerns that have been raised.
This is Santos. I'll second that. I have a motion by Nathan. I have a second by Santos. Is there further discussion? Okay, Nathan, how do you vote?
Aye. Of course, I remuted myself. Aye.
Santos?
Aye.
Doug?
Aye.
Scott?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Motion carries. Okay, item number 11C is a discussion of possible action to approve Resolution 0504-2001, transferring funds from the Rural Services Fund to the Secondary Roads Fund. This is an annual process. Sherry, did you want to just talk briefly about it?
Yes, this is the second half. This is the second half of the budgeted transfer from rural services to secondary roads.
Okay, is there any discussion?
This is Scott. I move to approve.
This is Santos. I'll second that. Okay, I have a motion by Scott and a second by Santos. Any further discussion? Scott, how do you vote?
Aye.
Santos?
Aye.
Doug?
Aye.
Nathan?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Motion carries. Item D is review and discussion regarding the estimated fund balances for the current fiscal year. Discussion and direction regarding additional funding for Unity Public Health. You should have all received a document from Nancy and Sherry giving us our... from Sherry. Okay. Sherry, did you want to take us through that briefly?
Sure. Let's start with Fund 1, the General Basic Fund, which is our main operating fund, and the fund that any additional dollars to public health would come from. And there's some unknowns here. So what I did was took the actual fund balance, subtracted the remaining budgeted expenditures. Now, usually departments leave between 5 and 10% on the table. So this is the worst case scenario that you're looking at. So if we assume that departments spend the $1.1 million, that leaves us with $5,936,000 in general fund balance, and that is not including any additional revenue that we would get in May or June. I don't know what those dollars would be, so like I said, this is worst case scenario. 30% fund balance of expenditures would be $3.8 million, which would leave us with a little over $2 million in excess dollars that in typical years we would move some to maybe capital projects, some to our building fund, some to our debt repayment fund. The majority of this overage is the additional federal inmate reimbursement dollars. That's a lot of it, but we typically have a similar amount over the percentage of fund balance. So I guess the long story short here, we do have some dollars available to provide to public health.
Okay, so and this would be, we're not prepared to go through a budget amendment process, which we'd have to move any of these funds if we chose to do that, correct, Sherry?
Right. And Nancy and I had some discussion about how to go about this, and it was my opinion that instead of block granting a particular amount of money to public health, that they on a weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, whatever works best for them, provide us with the amount of overage that they have, and we pay those payments to them.
I like that idea because I know Christy, when she put those numbers together, she was kind of predicting what might happen, what may not happen, and that's kind of a crystal ball. And I think that it looks like we are probably in position to help out. But I also don't want it to be, we have to match our numbers as well. If tax revenues don't come in like we expect. And so since you've not included any additional tax revenues, right, Sherry?
Right.
That her numbers assume we get no more money for anything as of the end of last week.
Right, and we're going to get an estimated $650,000 to $700,000 in federal inmate revenue that we could add to this, but we don't have it in our coffers right now, so I didn't include it.
Very good.
I don't know with taxes for May and June. I'm not sure what that'll look like, but there's no tax revenue included. There's no revenue for May and June at all included in this number.
Well, didn't I not read, did Amy send something out, I believe, where the governor postponed property tax payment deadlines without penalty till the end of May, and they've also pushed the tax sales off. Am I correct in reading that?
Yes, you're correct. That's why we're not going to assume that we're going to get any additional tax revenue yet this fiscal year.
I think that's...
Even if we do not, we still have some excess dollars to provide assistance to the public health department. Now, it makes sense to me and for our audit purposes that if they bill us for actual hours over and then we reimburse them, that makes the most sense to me. Then Christy doesn't have to try to guess what amount she's going to need. And then we grant her those dollars. It's just, I don't know if they get paid weekly or biweekly or what that looks like, but whatever, because from what I understand, this is an overtime issue, that whatever overtime she's paid that surpasses our subsidy to them, that she sends us an invoice and we reimburse her for that.
Yeah, I think that's a great plan, and hopefully that would work well for Christy, because then we're doing the cash flow for them.
Yeah, do we want to put some kind of a not to exceed or requires approval to exceed amount on there?
I guess that's a board decision. I don't know how we would choose what that number would be under the circumstances, and if she's only billing us for overtime hours related to COVID-19, we have to assume that we're not overpaying here.
I agree. I'm not worried about anybody abusing the system. I just never like to write a blank check.
Right.
I agree with Nathan. The other concern I have, and I haven't spoken personally with Christy about this in a bit, but I want to make sure that our other critical public health functions are continuing to move along. Because I know in the healthcare arena, kind of COVID-19 has taken over a lot of things, and we see where hospitals and providers that are maybe not directly into the COVID-19 response are struggling. And I want to make sure that, because public health does do a lot of really valuable functions, we want to make sure she's still, she hasn't diverted all of her funding there and all of her resources, so that we're still providing those critical resources to our citizens.
Right. I think that's why we said we'll cover any overtime or excess staffing for COVID-19, and then, our regular allocation to them should be able to cover the ongoing jobs that they perform.
Yeah, so if in my mind, she kind of threw out that $150,000 was her estimate of potential impact on the COVID-19 response. So that if we could, I like the idea of her sending us those payments, but just also to say that you've given us an estimate, and if it looks like that estimate is going to be short or, it's not going to be sufficient, we would like to have communications back as soon as it looks you see you have to ramp your response up?
Well, and if we ask her to invoice us for actual hours paid to her people, then we're only paying the actual additional COVID-19 dollars. So it would be difficult for us to overpay, because she'd be billing us actual hours.
Yeah, and I just want to make sure that so that the board understands that the extent of the liability, so if we have to take further action somewhere else, that we're prepared and have time to look at it.
And you could certainly say, bill us for your actual hours, equipment, thermometers and gloves and that sort of thing, up to, if you choose $150,000, and then, because we're talking 2 months here to the end of the fiscal year. If it looks like that number is way too high, there's no harm done, because we won't be billed for that amount. If it's too low, she can reach out, and it can be on another board agenda to deal with. It could be more than that. My guess is her estimate is probably fairly accurate.
Yeah, I would think at this point, they've kind of got their resources deployed and have an idea what their spend rate is. So I think that makes sense to me. Board members, what are your thoughts?
This is Santos. I like what Sherry's input is on that. I think that if we approve for what we've already had recommended by Christie, I think that if any further action is needed, then we'll have her give the input and put it on the agenda. But I would rather move for that approval of what's already indicated for 150.
Yeah, this is Nathan. I agree with that.
And also that we would pay actual expenditures, and they would just bill us at whatever is appropriate for their billing cycle every week, 2 weeks, whatever it is.
Sounds good.
This is Scott. I agree with that thought process.
This is Doug. I agree.
Okay, so on item D, so that's we can just do that as a direction basis, correct? Because we would have to shore up those dollars, Sherry, Nancy, at a budget amendment time, correct?
Right. The way this would work is if you give us direction to start reimbursing public health from in actual cost invoices with not to exceed the $150,000, if that's where you're going, we would start that, and then at some point we will do a budget amendment to pick up what those additional costs are. But it doesn't require us to do a budget amendment before we start helping them with their cash flow issue. Worst case scenario, we would go over in terms of our service area, and if that were to happen, then it would be noted in the audit. But I think you're going to see a lot of counties written up in their audits for something like this, because inappropriate responses we were responding to a COVID-19 pandemic.
Yeah, that's an audit exception I'm willing to take.
Right. Now, do you want to go over the other funds? I'm not sure if there were any concerns about the others that are on your sheet.
Well,
we're in good shape everywhere. The mental health fund, Fund 10, based on no additional revenue, we would be about $33,000 under 25%. But with their remaining expenditures, that number includes the guardianship and trust programs are still in the budget, and we have to assume that money will not be spent. I don't know with the situation with some of the things if Felicia would need to spend into that, but we were looking at about $80,000 in trust and payee services that are included in that 297 expenditure that more than likely won't be spent, which means we'll end up over 25% fund balance in the mental health fund. So go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was just going to ask if we knew yet what the region is requesting in terms of transfer dollars from the member counties for the next fiscal year.
I haven't heard what we put in our budget was the same per capita, and I'm thinking it was $3.68 that they requested in the current year. We've included that in our budget for next year. Now that may change and very likely will change, but I haven't heard if they've decided anything there.
So they've only asked for $368 a head?
Yeah, it was roughly the same 311,000 or 300 and some thousand, Nathan, that was asked for this year. Sherry, so you have those budget analysis, so we're not projecting additional tax payments, right? So this is kind of cash on hand based on spend. Okay, good.
So it's not including any trust and payee payments that will come into Fund 10 or any other revenue coming into Fund 10. This is based on what it looked like on the 29th of April, assuming we spend everything in the budget, which that's what I'm saying is I don't think Felicia's going to spend everything in the budget, which will mean we will not have a shortfall under 25%.
And Sherry, where does GA come out of? That's not under Fund 10, right?
That's Fund 1.
And is Fund 1 part of the... Okay.
And
so if
Felicia and I had some conversation about concerns there, but depending on when... Because right now, landlords can't evict, utilities can't be turned off, so everything's going great. At the point that happens, but we don't know if that'll happen in May or June, or we won't see the results of that until, I'm suspecting, after June 30, we'll see some folks who have not paid their rent or not paid their utilities that will come to the General Assistance Department for help.
I think that's a certainty. You know, as I think people have not understood the delayed action order and thinking that means they don't owe. And it doesn't mean that you don't have to pay. It just means that they can't evict. And I concur with Felicia. I think you're going to see added activity. So I just want to make sure that we have a mechanism should Felicia need it in our general assistance budget. It looks like our Fund 1 is in solid shape so that if we needed to, we could react in general assistance as well.
Absolutely. I don't have any concern at all that we couldn't deal with whatever situation and it, comes up there with additional assistance. And, we're assuming that won't happen until the beginning of next fiscal year. So that gives us plenty of time to do an amendment. And it certainly looks like the dollars will be there to provide that extra assistance.
This is Nathan, and I just want to say that it strikes me that it seems like, again, things could change, but we are in a position to weather this storm extremely well, or if not comfortably, then with a certain amount of security. And I think that just really speaks to the talent of the people we got in the county who are dedicated to providing all kinds of services and yet keeping an eye on the bottom line. So I just want to, from the bottom of my heart, thank you guys for all that work.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Nathan. We have a very talented and dedicated team. All the county employees and managers, they do a great job of watching the resources and providing the services. Okay, so do we have a consensus on this? Sounds like I've heard Nathan and I talk. It's a little bit out of the others. So it sounds like we really can just move forward with the public health funding. General assistance, Sherry, you're in communication with Felicia. She obviously understands if she just needs to communicate to the board, and we'll take whatever steps necessary.
Right.
Okay, seeing no more discussion, we'll move on to item E, discussion of possible action authorizing the execution of the well-marked third-party administration documents. Nancy, did you want to lead us through that?
I absolutely will. I did not put anything in your packet because you would have ended up, there really wasn't any way to neatly summarize. when I got the renewal information for Walmart this year, the thing that was the most striking was that the individual stop loss premium was going to increase by almost 18%. This is on top of an almost 9% last year. Our current individual stop loss is $75,000, which that means for any individual, once their claims hit $75,000, then we have insurance that kicks in and pays anything above that. Because we've had some cases that go above that, that's really why we're seeing such an increase in that premium. So I asked our Wellmark rep to provide me with some other options to look at. The options that she provided me were to increase our individual stop loss to $85,000, which means that we would be responsible for the first $85,000 of any individual claim. I also looked at bumping it to $95,000, and then she gave me a couple options where we would keep our individual stop loss at $75,000, but we would add an aggregate individual stop loss. The two options she gave me are at $63,750 and then at $93,750. So what would happen there is we would still have a $75,000 stop loss for individual claims, but we say anything that goes above that, we're going to pay the first $63,750 or $93,750. That makes a significant difference in what our stop loss premium would be. It saves us between $50,000 and $75,000 to do that. So if we go with one of those, we're kind of taking a gamble that if we don't have enough claims that go over the $75,000, we could save some money. If we have a lot of claims that go over, then we're gonna spend a little more than we would if we just stayed with the $75,000. So kind of after reviewing all of those and looking at the numbers about how many large claims we've had over the last 4 years and kind of how this would work, it is my recommendation that we choose the option where we keep the $75,000 aggregate stop loss, but do an aggregate individual stop loss of $93,750. Do you have any questions, or did I just completely lose everybody with that?
Well, I think I'm tracking with you, Nancy. So when you looked at this, one of the things we've seen is I think our fund balance is pretty healthy in our mental and our health and dental fund. We're at about 1.37 right now.
Yes.
And so that 93,000 aggregate stop loss, we've kind of been staying roughly even with our fund balance the last couple of years, maybe grown 100 or 200,000. Would that be a fair statement?
That would be a very fair statement.
And so as I look at this, it's a kind of risk versus trade-off. So if we had a couple of these 93,000, would we anticipate, based on the numbers you saw, that we'd have maybe one a year, maybe two a year? I think we could tolerate one or 1.5 a year, maybe.
And so far in the current year, we haven't had any. It's a little tough to track those costs because the information I get from Walmart runs by calendar year, because that's when they're putting together renewal numbers. But our plan runs by fiscal year, so you have to kind of figure out when exactly during the year we have these claims that run over. We're certainly, if you look at kind of a bell curve of claims and kind of the ups and downs of that, I would say we have a good potential not to hit enough claims that we would have to spend that full aggregate individual stop loss of $93,750. And if we don't, then we save money over our current arrangement.
So I'm going to ask you maybe a question on the next item here. Then is the recommendations on the premiums. You had put in the assumption that we would do your recommendation on the stop loss and aggregate stop loss changes as well.
What we do for the aggregate stop loss really didn't affect the premium numbers a whole lot because we are in the third year of a 3-year contract with the deputies that, if you recall, the deputies contract still requires us to negotiate health and dental insurance, and so we had negotiated premiums into that contract that we're kind of tied to. So it didn't have a whole lot of effect.
Okay, yeah, forgot that, thank you. Okay, so other members?
This is Scott. Nancy, I have a question. Could you give me just a 2 or 3 year history of how many of these events have occurred in the previous 2 or 3 years of a number in that $90,000 range?
Yeah, just a second. I have to find that in the past. Okay, so if the best numbers I can give you would be, again, based on calendar year instead of fiscal year, so it's a little skewed. But in the current fiscal year, we haven't had any. In the previous fiscal year, we had 2, and we would have ended up, if we were under the arrangement that I'm proposing, we would have ended up spending about $54,000 instead of that. So we wouldn't get the $93,750. We would have spent about $54,000. So we would have done better off under the arrangement that I'm proposing. The year before that, we had 3. 2 of them were very, very large. So in that scenario, we would have spent the whole $93,750. And then the year before that, we had 1, and we would have spent about $72,000 of the $93,750. So in that year, we would have come out ahead under this arrangement as well.
Very good, thank you.
You're welcome.
I like your proposal. I like the history of this. I like the proposal.
Well, I spent a lot of time kind of working through the numbers and the scenarios, and obviously it's a guess. Under any of the scenarios, it's a guess about how many claims we're going to have and what those claims are going to cost.
Thank you.
The other board members have comments or concerns?
I agree. I think it could save us some money. And I appreciate Nancy going to all the work to put that together.
Okay, so if we have no further questions, I would accept a motion to authorize the execution of the third-party amended.
This is Santos. I'll make that motion.
Scott will second.
So I have a motion. Aye. Scott?
Aye.
Nathan?
Aye.
Doug?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Motion carries. Okay, item number F is action to set the FY 2021 health and dental insurance premiums. Nancy?
Okay, so the premiums, what's built into our premiums is that the employer, would be funding an additional $25 per month per employee for health insurance. The employee, if they have single coverage, they would be funding an additional $15 a month. If they have family coverage, it's an additional $30 a month. And like I said, this was negotiated into, at least the employee share was negotiated into the 3-year contract that we have with the deputies. This is the 3rd year of that. The dental premiums, based on our activity and what Wellmark recommends, I don't see any need to change those for the next fiscal year.
Okay, other questions for Nancy? If not, I would accept a motion.
So moved, Nathan.
I'll second Captain Santos.
Okay, I have a motion by Nathan with a second by Santos to approve the health and dental insurance premiums. Nathan, how do you vote?
Aye.
Santos?
Aye.
Scott?
Aye.
Doug?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Motion carries. Item number G is action to set the health insurance okay, I'm going to start that over. Action to set the health insurance annual enrollment and dental insurance open enrollment periods May 11th through May 27th of 2020.
So every year we are required to have an annual enrollment for health insurance. This isn't an opportunity to add family members that you don't currently have on there. They are only allowed to operate. You're only allowed to add somebody if you have an event, but this allows our employees to move between the three plans that we have if they want to, increase their deductibles or decrease their deductibles. For our dental insurance, we do have an actual open enrollment, which means that an employee can add eligible family members that they don't have on their plan for some reason currently. We will send information out to each employee about this enrollment period and with paperwork that they need to complete and return, even if they don't want to make any change, so that we can have documentation that, as required by law, that we made the offer to all of our employees and they actively selected which plan they wanted to be under.
Okay, any questions for Nancy? If not, I would accept the motion.
Captain Santos, I'll make that motion.
Nathan will second.
So I have a motion by Santos, a second by Nathan. Any discussion? Santos, how do you vote?
Aye.
Nathan?
Aye.
Scott? Scott, we didn't hear you.
Aye.
Okay, thank you, Scott. Doug?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Motion carries. Item number H is discussion possible action to approve the FY 2021 salary schedule. It's a 3% adjustment to the base for the FY 19 and 20 salary schedule. Nancy, did you want to talk about that?
Sure. As you probably recall, we have for the employees that fall in our salary administration program, which would be non-elected and non-union employees. We have a salary schedule that has a number of grades, and then there's step within those grades. Each year, the board takes a look at adjusting the whole scale. What I used this year and what was included in all of the budget numbers that you saw and approved was a adjust the scale by 3%. When you take that 3% adjustment to the scale and factor in all of the employees that are eligible for a step at some point during the year, that total comes out to 3.69% for the year. Just kind of as a comparison and reminder, what was approved for elected officials this year is a 4% increase. Under the AFSCME contract, which covers our jail support staff, so the kitchen staff and the nurses, theirs comes out to a 3.67 this year. The deputies comes out to a 3.5. Their union contract comes out to 3.58. For corrections officers, right now, what I'm coming up with is a 4.17. But the reason for that is because they have a number of brand new employees, and the way that contract works is they get a bump at 6 months and again at a year. So that drives that number up when we have a bunch of new people. Secondary roads, their actual number comes out at about 2.8%. in the contract that we negotiated, 3-year contract we had negotiated with them. The medical examiner, I budgeted a 3% increase for them as well.
Okay, thank you, Nancy. Any questions or comments? Nancy, one of the questions I'd had is this, we did a salary study a number of years ago, and there were some inequities in our salary administration, and we pretty much rolled through all those recommended changes. Now I know a couple we did on a 2- and 3-year basis.
Yes, we have completed all of those adjustments that were pointed out as part of that salary study.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if I don't hearing no questions, I'd accept a motion.
So moved, Nathan. I'll second it, Santos.
I have a motion by Nathan and a second by Santos. Any further discussion? Nathan, how do you vote?
Aye.
Santos?
Aye.
Scott?
Aye.
Doug?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Motion carries. Nancy, did you have anything else for the board this morning?
I do not have any other items.
Thank you. Item number 12 is to receive information from county employees. Are there any other county employees on the line that wish to share something with the board this morning?
Jeff, this is Brian.
Go ahead, Brian.
Just going to give the board an update. At 11 o'clock, there's going to be our monthly countywide siren activation just to see if everything's working. I also want to give the board an update. Last week, we did have the governor's office send a strike team to Muscatine. This was for the long-term care facility staff. Basically, they did nasal and blood tests on residents of Muscatine County, and they also included Louisa County. This was held at West Middle School. Essentially, I, as emergency management, worked with the governor's office, the Iowa Department of Public Health, the Department of Human Services, and the National Guard. And we set up a facility. This was only the second time in the state they've activated the strike team. The comments I received from the staff and everybody, they were very appreciative of the location that we had established. We did hold it at a gymnasium. I do not have the numbers at this time. Also, last week, that was held on April 29th and April 30th. There was also testing conducted at West Liberty Foods. That essentially was with West Liberty Foods and the Iowa Department of Public Health. That was held on Thursday the 30th and Friday, May 1st. I didn't have much involvement with them on that. I do anticipate today in the governor's press conference, there will be some announcements regarding some of the testing that we have. I would speculate that we might have a little bit of an increase in positives, and she'll provide more information when that time comes. And that's all I have for emergency management.
Thank you, Brian. Any other county employees? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to item 13, receive comments from the public. Do we have members of the public that wish to make a comment on an item that was not currently on the agenda?
Ed Askew would like to.
Okay, Ed, go ahead.
Okay, 2 quick items. Number one, when the county engineer said slump tests were no longer required on concrete, I went ahead and researched that real quick. Iowa DOT lists slump test and air test for slip-formed concrete. Now, I shared that information with Supervisor Saucedo, the link and such, but the key thing is this. The county engineer should have said, we will provide the supervisor with our quality manual. They should be written in-house, not just copied from, we do what DOT says. but should have had a quality manual written and shared. So I'm going to do a FOIA request for the quality manual to see if it exists. Number one. Number two, just as this is for you, Jeff, as the chair, has the sheriff indicated to you whether he is going to finish the investigation of the jailer who is on administrative leave? And if he has, when will it be done? Has that been shared with the board?
We have had no further communications since the jailer was, Captain Naylor was put on administrative leave. Last communications we'd had.
Okay, so he's still getting a paycheck. Just an observation. He's still getting a paycheck, and yet there is no light at the end of the tunnel. At least it's not been shared with you, such as the investigation is going to be completed at this date, not what the outcome is. So, Nathan, we don't worry about personnel matters there, but just when will it be completed? So that's an observation. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ed.
I would just say that even discussing an ongoing investigation is a personnel matter that's covered by the Iowa law. And as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff or anyone else, we have no purview over the sheriff's personnel decisions anyway. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Well, yeah, but Nathan, if it's in the public press, it's it's hard to say that it's confidential.
Tell them to Des Moines. That's where the law comes from.
Okay. Do we have anything else for the board this morning? Other members of the public have something to? Okay, hearing none, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for your participation, and have a safe week.
Thank you.